we do have a Super Bowl to cover this week. We have Super Bowl 56 coming up next weekend that is going to feature the Los Angeles Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, last week we did a segment about reasons why we think that the Los Angeles Rams can win a Lombardi Trophy next week for Super Bowl 56. Well, now we're going to flip it and we're going to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, Kevin, to pose the question to you, we talked about the Rams last week. Let's talk about the Bengals. Give me your reasons to why the Cincinnati Bengals can win Super Bowl 56 next weekend.
Well, similar to what I said with the Rams, the one of the variables in which the Bengals, are going to have to be successful is going to be the offensive line. The offensive line has been struggly, inconsistent. Like I'm trying to think of like nice words to put. It's been trash. They played a lot better against the Chiefs. Joe Burrow was able to adjust and escape the pocket and kind of extend the play with his legs in a couple of instances, but you are not going to be able to get away from the life-threatening conditions that are Von Miller and Aaron Donald that consistently. We saw what happened in a Super Bowl last year where the quarterback did not have enough time, and Patrick Mahomes and the pass rush of the Buccaneers was able to make his life not just a living hell, but just a nightmare. So I think for the success of the Bengals, the offensive line is going to have to play the greatest game of their entire lives and completely change the narrative to what it is that they've played the entire postseason, which has been inconsistent at best because in that second half of the Chiefs game, Joe Burrow had a lot of time. Joe Burrow was able to make good throws, and Joe Burrow was able to make great plays with time to make those decisions in the pocket. So the offensive line has got to play exponentially. Second, it's unfortunate, but it's all relying upon Joe Burrow. Now, the offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals needs to understand that even if the offensive line plays the greatest game of their lives, they are still going to have to account for Aaron Donald and Von Miller to get in that backfield at some point or another. So they're going to have to play a lot of this game in the gun and make a lot of these plays, short, intermediate routes, get the ball out of Joe's hand quick, and really, really, really lean heavily on Joe Mixon. So I guess the next reliant or the next piece for them to win would be a good balance of a run pass option, or excuse me, a run pass offense, because you're going to need to give Joe Burrow the ability to have a play action pass and actually have the defense believe that that's going to happen. If you just have Joe drop back and throw it 40, 45 times, and then Joe Mixon only have 11 touches, it's not going to provide you guys with a successful, chance to win the Super Bowl. So I'm really sitting here and I'm looking. The offensive line has got to keep Joe clean. Joe Burrow and that offensive coordinator as a unit are going to have to put Joe and that offense in successful situations to move the ball down the field. And Joe Mixon's probably going to have one of the best games of his career, if not the best games of his season. And he's obviously the third or second leading rusher in the NFL this year. I believe he's right behind Jonathan Taylor, and then, of course, it's Nick Chubb. But overall, lean on Joe Mixon, give that play action, have Joe sitting in the shotgun and able to hit his other receivers in T. Higgins, in Tyler Boyd, and make sure that they keep Jalen Ramsey honest. You cannot shy away from the best corner in the game just because he's there. You have to be able to test him. You have to be able to keep him honest in terms of if Jamar runs a double move and he's with him, that doesn't mean you go away from it. That doesn't mean you just throw screens or just ignore him. Jamar Chase is a playmaking wide receiver, and he needs to be given the ball in order to give Cincinnati a chance. So overall, offensive line, Joe Burrow's got to make some clean throws with some short intermediate routes, and Joe Mixon's got to have himself one hell of a game.
Well, there's a few factors at play here for how the Bengals can win Super Bowl 56. I'm pretty much going to limit it to three, and I'm going to start off with the first one. So the first one, I'm actually going to start on the defense. The defense for Cincinnati has played really well throughout this entire playoff stretch, from their first game against the Raiders all the way up to the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game last week. And the one thing that really kind of stood out to me about that game against the Chiefs was that pass rush. That pass rush in the second half against the Chiefs was able to get home because for that entire second half, that Chiefs offense was held in check. Patrick Mahomes had probably one of the worst halves of football I've ever seen him play, and it was because Cincinnati's defense was up to snuff in that second half. And when you hold a high-powered offense like the Chiefs to 3 points in the second half, that gives Joe Burrow and the offenses and the offense a lot of opportunities to work with to put up points for your team. So I think going into this game, that Bengals defense, it needs to get that pass rush home against Matt Stafford. And we did see that happen against the 49ers in the NFC Championship game because through the first 3 quarters, that Rams offense could not get much going. And if San Francisco's front four can get a pass rush against that Rams offense, I imagine that the Bengals are going to have opportunities to not only pressure Matt Stafford, but to get him on the ground and get some sacks on the board as well. So that's going to be a big factor. And then obviously they're going to have to play lockdown coverage against Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham Jr., and Van Jefferson. Really, the main factor is Cooper Kupp because Cooper Kupp is having a phenomenal season this year. So if Cincinnati has any shot of winning on the defensive side of the ball, they have to lock down Cooper and they have to force Matt Stafford to either throw to OBJ or Van Jefferson to have any sort of shot on that side of the ball. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, I'm going to be a little bit more broad with the points here for Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow needs to play within himself. This is a game where it's all about momentum. And we've seen in multiple Super Bowls where one turnover can entirely shift the momentum in the favor of one team if they're able to get a turnover or if they start scoring points. And with the way that the Cincinnati's offense has played throughout this postseason, is that I think they've played within themselves extremely well. And they never let the game get too far away from them. And even when they were up, they weren't stupid with their decisions. So going into this game, as long as Joe Burrow is protected, and as long as he's given time to make some timely throws to either Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, or Joe Mixon out of the backfield, I think it's going to bode well for Cincinnati's offense. And as long as Joe is cool, calm, collected, I think they will have an opportunity to score points against that Rams defense. Now, granted, the Rams defense, I think, is a little bit more superior than what Cincinnati's defense is, but that doesn't mean that they can't be had. We did see that the Rams gave up 24 points in the second half against the Buccaneers in the NFC divisional round. So if the Bengals are able to get some favorable matchups as far as their formations are concerned against that defense, I think Joe Burrow can definitely take that task. It can definitely take that defense to task, not just in like a drive or two, but for multiple drives throughout the Super Bowl. And then really the last point that I'll make is the offensive line. The offensive line for Cincinnati, they have to play better. Granted, I did think that they played a lot better against the Chiefs than they did the week prior when they played the Titans and gave up 9 sacks. The only way that they're going to be able to win this game on the offensive side of the ball is if they're able to protect Joe Burrow, and it all starts up in the trenches. If the Bengals are able to win the line of scrimmage against the Rams, that is going to bode extremely well for them, not just in the passing game, but in the run game as well, because it'll open up run lanes for Joe Mixon, and it will open up the play action where Joe can take advantage of that. And it's going to start with trying to basically double team and shut down Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald is one of the greatest defensive forces of this generation. So it's not going to be a single team block that's going to get him. He has to be double teamed the entire game. But that will give guys like Von Miller opportunities to exploit. So I would like to think that the Bengals would probably throw in some chip blocks against guys like Von Miller and Leonard Floyd as well. Both of those guys outside of Aaron Donald can create pressure against the quarterback. And those guys can dominate the line of scrimmage as well. So Cincinnati's offensive line is going to have their hands full with those 3 guys in particular. But if they're able to contain those guys, I think they have a very good shot of winning Super Bowl 56. And it's like we said last week, this is a game where I think both teams are very evenly matched. And just because the Rams may be the favorite in this game, that does not mean that the Bengals can go out there and get a win on the road in LA. I think they have all of the pieces to be able to do it. I think they've got the confidence and swagger to go out and do it. And as long as they're playing within themselves, they play smart football, they don't turn the ball over, I think they have a very good shot to win Super Bowl 56 against the Rams. That's just how I see it.